Thinking about AI and the fact that it's inevitable in the workplace, it's so important for individuals to know about its potential and even to get in there and play with it, which I know several of my guests have talked about getting in there, experimenting, piloting, trying it out. And although some businesses are adopting it at a slower pace than others, each of the guests that I've interviewed so far, like I mentioned, thinking about AI and the fact that it's inevitable in the workplace, it is so important for individuals to know about what its potential is and even to get in there and play with it. Although some businesses are absolutely adopting it at slower pace than others, each of the guests that I've interviewed so far has talked about experimenting, piloting, and seeing how you can leverage AI. The other part of the conversation I've gotten into from more of an educational perspective and kind of in general is really thinking about how you leverage your own thinking first and then you layer on the AI aspect or perspective. So, how can you leverage large language models like ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini to help enhance what you're doing and making sure that it still remains meaningful what you're actually doing? So, I want to share some of the ways that I've used AI, and specifically these large language models like ChatGPT. I've started to use more of a program called Manus and using tools like Gamma app and Aha slides that have AI aspects or functionality built into them. And some of these are traditionally what we think of as AI, while others, like I mentioned, have those features or functionality that you can leverage within them. And playing around with each of these has really helped me. One thing specifically that's been interesting, and this is probably more from a ChatGPT and Manus perspective, came up when I was listening to podcasts and interviewing someone recently. So we were talking about speaking your voice into an AI tool. And if you use ChatGPT or several others, they have that little microphone. Whereas instead of typing something, you can hit that and start to speak into it. And then once you hit enter, it transcribes what you say. More and more people I'm finding are starting to use their voice versus typing. Some people may consider that is so totally lazy, but your voice and the things that you say can actually be so much richer when you put them into the tool versus what you might just type in a short prompt. And usually, if you're typing something, it's like, how quickly can I say this versus giving more context or giving more insight or background. I have seen that actually happen with several of the prompts that I've done. I might record something on the way into work and then I drop it into ChatGPT or Manus and I ask it to transcribe it and give me feedback based on that. So I might ask a specific question or two in my prompt, but it's really that voice text that leads what I'm getting to or what I'm trying to uncover. So, leveraging these chat and other tools helps me to be more productive and efficient. But the most important thing is to make sure that no matter what kind of tool that you might be using from an AI perspective, that you are the one that is ensuring that it is authentic. It has to be you to the degree possible. And if there's anything that's not accurate or correct, you, my friend, you need to get in there and you need to tweak it. And I will tell you, I have had battles with ChatGPT and Manus, and sometimes people laugh at me when I say this. AI tools are still evolving over time. And the interesting thing is that I have definitely told ChatGPT before, you are not listening to me, or I will say, that is wrong. And what I'm starting to see in Manus is that it's not as good right now at remembering some of the other things that I've shared with it. Whereas when I use ChatGPT, it has started to look more across other chats. Manus isn't doing that very well unless I tell it to, and then it's going to take more credits and pull that. Even when I'm in the same chat within Manus and I type something later, sometimes it makes assumptions that aren't correct instead of asking me clarifying questions. So you have to be very cautious when you're using these tools. They are definitely are more of an enhancement and a brainstorming tool than a tool that's going to create something for you from scratch. So you should not have that expectation. So, that ability to enhance or brainstorm has really been a central theme in a lot of the discussions that I've had about AI. I had a career coaching client come to me within the last few months after I'd worked on her resume, and I sent it to her. We redid some items from the first version, and then I sent it back. And she highlighted a spot on the resume and asked me, "Did you use AI for this?" And I will tell you, at first I was a little taken aback, and I thought like I was caught or something like that. And then I said to myself, no, I'm allowed to use this. I'm using it in the right way. And so I went back to her and I said, yes, I do use AI tools and this is how I use them. And I explained my process. It turns out that the reason she asked was because there was a typo in one area that she had highlighted in her response to me. And the funny thing was is that I had leveraged AI in pieces at one point, but then when I went back and made changes to it afterwards manually, it was seriously my fat fingers making a spelling error. And I just thought it was interesting that a spelling error is what made her wonder if I was using an AI tool when that was actually my own mistake. And so it's just interesting to think about how it can be used and making sure that you're using it in the right ways. And yes, you could definitely be more efficient, but you have to determine what the cost is. Are you always having that human eyeball on it to help make sure it's accurate? And are you doing some kind of audit if you're using it continuously for a process? So, another thing that I found not too long ago was when I started to play around on Manus with some visuals. I wanted to have some language on the visuals and use my brand colors for my career coaching. So, I was having Manus makes me some visuals, and it was almost like a poster, like a post for especially LinkedIn. Not necessarily with images and people on it. It may have had some images here or there. I think there was one that had some trees or a river or something like that. And I looked at it and I thought the output from what I got looked cool. But then over the next few days, and I hadn't used it yet, over the next few days, I was looking through my news feed on LinkedIn and I was like, oh, that's from AI. That's from AI. Oh, that's from AI. So whether it's Manus, ChatGPT, or whatever other tool, I could really start to tell a lot of them were AI generated. And at one point, I even downloaded one of those images from the AI tool and I went to upload it into LinkedIn like I was going to post it. And LinkedIn added a note saying this was an AI generated image. And I thought, oh, I don't know that I like that. I don't know if that hits the algorithm differently. It felt very inauthentic to me, and I wasn't quite sure of it. So, what I ended up doing was I took the concept of the image, I went into Canva, and I made something a little bit similar but different, putting more of my stamp on it. I didn't want it to look like everybody else's, and I didn't want people to think I was just pushing a button and generating all this stuff through AI because I spend a lot of time and thought even when I do leverage AI. It doesn't always end up being the final piece. I changed the fonts, I added my logo, I added more visuals, I changed the size of things, I make it feel more like me and my brand versus just something that AI would spit out for me. And I felt so much more authentic being able to post and share that with people. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with necessarily using those items that come out of AI, but you want to think about whether you are really setting yourself apart or not. If the value is not seen easily, then are you getting out of it what your intention is, or are you just posting to post? So, shifting gears a bit, I am really excited in the coming months about the episodes I have recorded with individuals. I have had such great conversations and an opportunity to get really curious. And it's really interesting because sometimes, and I can't believe I'm admitting this, but I have a lot of anxiety before I get on some of my recordings. And maybe my guests have no idea when I show up, but sometimes I think about canceling up until the minute of it because I'm so nervous. Believe me, I only cancel if I absolutely have to. It is either if I'm not feeling well physically or mentally or if I have a family emergency. But I will tell you, I get super nervous and anxious. And one of the things that's scary for me is thinking about talking to these guests who have so much knowledge, so much expertise, and so much experience. And sometimes it scares me that I'm not going to be smart enough. And I have to take a moment and think, I don't have to be as smart as them. I have to know how to ask questions to get that insight and that expertise out of them so I can share that with all of you. And I tell you what, I have had so much fun doing that. And what's interesting is, even though I might be nervous and anxious before I get on a podcast episode, once I get into it and I find my groove of asking questions, by the time I get off that recording, I have to tell you, I am almost shaking because I'm so excited. I am so thankful. I'm filled with gratitude that I went through with it. I'm hosting this podcast and I found these amazing guests to talk with, and I'm able to get this information out to all of you. And I am just so overwhelmed by the knowledge, expertise, and the perspective that these guests bring to the table for us. So sometimes when I start to do a little bit of research before I go in to prepare questions, I will read the bios of the guests, I'll look at their information, and I'll think, holy crap, I don't know that I see a clear connection between some of the things that I want to talk with them about, or how does this connect with what we're looking at overall, or I only see a small piece of how it connects. Then I actually leverage AI tools and I share information about me and my business and my podcast. And I ask, hey, can you make a strong connection between what I'm doing, the purpose of my podcast, and what this person brings to the table? And I tell you what, it really helps to open my eyes so much more. And it gives me so many more questions and gets me excited, more excited to get on the episode with them. And that is helping me to brainstorm. It's helping to give some clarity. It's helping to get me to ask additional questions and make additional connections. I'm not putting in, tell me exactly what to ask, and that's what I do. So, the thing I love about the way that I host this podcast is that I do keep it informal. It doesn't feel overly formal having that rigid discussion of what you need to talk about, what you shouldn't talk about. It's just letting it free flow and get really curious. And there was an episode I recently recorded. It's going to air in a couple of months. And we got through so many questions I had, and I was just mesmerized. I was excited. I was overwhelmed. You name it. I looked at the clock. It had only been like 17 minutes into our conversation. And I thought to myself, let me just take a pause. I'm going to edit that out later. Let me see what other questions I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. And I said this to the guest as we were recording. And we talked about, was there anything else that we should cover? The guest brought up some other things that he wanted to talk about. So we started to talk about those. And towards the end, I ended up apologizing to him for how short it was. And the guest was like, you don't need to apologize. We talked about a lot of stuff in a very short amount of time. And I know that happens, especially if you think about going to do a presentation and you might think it's going to take forever, but you like speed right through it. You're so excited, maybe you're so nervous that you get right through it pretty quickly. And it doesn't matter. You're still getting the information out there and you're giving individuals the content that they're interested in. Initially, I thought every episode had to be a specific number of minutes or a certain range of minutes. And then I realized I took a step back and I said, you know what? It's going to be however long it's going to be. When I recorded that first episode that aired a couple weeks back, it ended up being about 25 minutes long when I recorded it. And I was like, yes, that is awesome. Like, I like that time frame. But then I played it back and I thought, oh, I want to change the order of things. I want to do things a little bit different. And I got some ideas to enhance it. I used AI to make it stronger and more organized. And when I re recorded it, I ended up being like 9 minutes. So it went from this 25 minutes, shrunk down to 9 minutes, and I thought, oh my gosh, that is my first solo episode. Great. But then I had somebody listen to it the day it came out, and they said, that was so awesome. And I was blown away. And I said, if you think that is awesome, just wait for the first guest episode and for future episodes. That made me feel so much better to get that feedback. So it doesn't matter the length of it. What matters is the content and that it's rich, that it's helpful, and that it gets your ears pointed up and paying attention. So I thank you for listening. I am completely enjoying this ride, interviewing the guests we have, coming up with different solo episodes as well. And in the future, I would love to hear what topics for solo episodes that you might be interested in. I would really love to dive into those a little bit more. And what I typically try to do in my classroom and in my teachings and in my career coaching business and also in this podcast is bring a little bit of theory or concepts to the table and then also what is the reality? That practice of how we actually do it. So, if there are topics that you're intrigued with related to AI, technology, career development, anything like that, please send me a direct message on LinkedIn and let me know. Or feel free to email me, learn@tracyschroyerphd.com. I would love to hear from you. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.